what would you say to people who are at home and they're thinking, yeah, this doesn't bother me, it doesn't interest me, why should I care about the actions that people are taking on the picket line, things like that?
Well, I mean, if somebody's got a perfect life, then I wish them good luck, and I hope it continues like that. Very few of us do have a perfect life. Most of us have things we'd like to change, or we'd like to prevent being changed against our will. And there's some old slogans from the movement which I think are really valuable. There's an injury to one is an injury to all, but also a victory for one is a victory for all, right? Is that when one group of workers wins, even if it's something that doesn't affect us directly, that makes maybe your employer think twice about taking you on, right? It gives other workers more confidence and so on. So whatever industry people are in, whatever state of organisation or lack of it you're in, it's always better for workers if another group of workers can win. That puts them in a stronger position.
What do you think makes a successful strike action? What makes something like this successful in the long term?
I think obviously mobilising around it in a way that is going to engage the membership. So you want to, I think a lot of people, especially, now or particularly a couple of years ago, felt quite nervous about taking industrial action, about coming out on a picket line when we took strike action. A lot of people messaged to say that they felt, I've never done it before, I feel like, is it going to be confrontational? But when you come down today, you can see that it's like a nice community vibe and you get to talk with people and, feel the support from others. So I think it's about trying to bring people into that community and see that it's a normal, part of our responsibility as union members to be engaged in this way, and trying to, I suppose, build that culture is quite important, because some of it does feel quite unfamiliar now because of the low levels of trade union activity.
Yeah. And how would you encourage someone who's never been on strike before to participate?
Yeah, I think that is quite a challenge. So what we tried to do with our previous strike action is we tried to do sort of positive supplementary activities around it. So we did like a teach out where we would run classes outside of the university. So like trying to do positive things around it that encourage people to, to step outside of the comfort zone a little bit, and then through that activity you start to feel more and more comfortable doing things like coming onto a picket line.
I think the important thing is that strikes are part of a more general wave of class struggle. Everybody's feeling the pinch at the moment. Everybody can see that their cost of living is going up, their quality of life is being eroded day after day. So it's just a matter of time until all of us are on strike, right? Because that's the one way that we know that we can put the screws to the bosses and actually start to affect some change in the way that we live. So I think there's two important benefits of coming to support workers on strike. The first is just growing that relationship with the working class, growing the relationship with the workers, and building a more unified class so that we can start fighting bigger battles over and over and winning. And then I think the other important thing is that actually it works. When we actually generalize the strike out, when we bring in broader layers of support from the anti-racist movement, from the anti-war movement, as we saw with the mega pickets in Birmingham, actually that applies some real pressure.
No one striking is asking for a ridiculous amount, asking simply for pay rise in line with inflation, which is effectively the same wage. So what would you say to people who maybe think that these asks are unreasonable?
I think I suppose there's an impression that teachers are out here getting paid a lot. The teachers at the college across the road from me before they took strike action were getting, and this was like for the higher end, we're getting 26, 27 grand a year, and the hours that they were putting in were above what they were working there. So they were putting in evenings, doing preparation, things like that. So particularly with further education is one of the worst paid sectors in education. There's an impression because it's a professional job that you're going to be, living a really great standard of living. That is not the case for a lot of the people working in colleges. So I think it's, I'm saying this as a general thing to people in general, that like asking for a decent standard of living is not unreasonable. But I think actually when if you see all the buses coming past here today, people beeping the horns in support, actually people do feel like that, and people do know that it is a good thing to stand up for yourself, and it is a good thing to make these asks. I think maybe in the wider public, those who don't have experience of trade union organising, anything feels unreasonable sometimes. It feels that you shouldn't be asking anything, but when you start to get organised yourself and you start to stand up yourself, you see that that's beneficial for everybody. If we all stand up, we all improve the situation of workers in general.
What would you say to people who go, I'm not interested in strike action, how does this affect me? What would you say to someone who's never participated in it before?
Yeah, I think, it's like anything. It feels like it could happen to anybody else and not you. But, we see this process of proletarianization where even traditionally very well-paid white-collar jobs are now being started, the pay is being eroded by stuff like AI, by offshoring, by agency work. So actually everybody is increasingly feeling the pinch, even the higher paid workers. So, as that starts to happen, as people's quality of life starts to fall away a little bit more day by day, actually they start to realize that when we stand together, we can actually make a change, and we don't have to wait for the bosses to just have a crisis of consciousness and start, paying us more.
Often people get very focused on the details of their own dispute and their campaign, actually realise there's common issues affecting the whole working class. We're all facing pressures on our standard of living, we're all facing crumbling services and so on, and we have so much in common, and if we can organise on that basis and stick together, we have a so much better chance of winning.
Yeah, and how have you found the challenges of organising? Do you find it easy or difficult to get workers to come together?
Well, I think if it was easy, we'd have won by now. I think if we look historically, unionisation has tended to come in waves, so you get periods where there's a lot of strike action, and when that happens, workers can see the benefits of being organised in the union for themselves, and it doesn't take a lot in those circumstances for workers to organise. People can see it's common sense that if we don't organise and take action, we'll see our standard of living eroded or lose our jobs or whatever. I think the difficulty we've got is we've had decades and decades and decades of relatively low levels of strike action, and that's meant there's generations have grown up, industries have grown up, occupations have grown up with really no tradition of organising and action. And that means, I think, that it is harder for people to organise. A lot of young people now going into work are working in industries where there's never been significant unionisation, and it then takes a lot of work to try and get people to see how sticking together can make a difference. And that's not just about telling people what to think, it's about helping people experience that for themselves, and that's why I love days like today where lots of people passing by could see workers sticking together, or people hear about the fact that some of the bus drivers have recently won above inflation pay rises. We don't have to be victims to what's thrown at us by employers or landlords or management or the government at local or national level if we organise. But that takes work and effort in a lot of cases, and I think often people are told politics is a kind of consumer experience, like you pick your product you like and so on, and then you end up going, well, I don't like any of them very much, so maybe I won't have any of those. But actually change comes from masses of people from below sticking together, taking action. That's how we've always won things.